The night air was cold and sharp, the kind of cold that made every breath visible under the moonlight. Hundreds of pack members had gathered in the great stone courtyard of the Silverfang territory, their eyes fixed on the raised platform where the elders stood in solemn silence. Torches burned along the edges of the courtyard, their light flickering against the ancient walls that had stood for centuries. Tonight was the night of the Moonrite, a ceremony so rare that most of the pack had only heard of it in stories passed down from their grandparents. Ilara stood near the very back of the crowd, wrapped in a plain gray cloak, trying to make herself as small as possible. She was used to being overlooked. As the lowest-ranked Omega in the pack, she had spent her whole life being invisible, and she had learned long ago that invisibility was safer than attention. Attention meant mockery. Attention meant reminders of what she was not. Near the front of the courtyard stood Damien, the alpha heir, tall and confident, his dark eyes scanning the crowd like he already owned every soul standing there. He wore his authority the way other people wore clothing, easily and without thought. Beside him stood his closest friends, all betas, all laughing quietly at something he had said moments earlier. Ilara had heard the words before she even reached the courtyard. Someone had asked Damien if he was nervous about the ceremony, since it was said to confirm the future leader of the pack. Damien had laughed and glanced toward the back of the crowd, right at her, as if she were nothing more than a shadow not worth acknowledging. "Nervous? Please," he had said, loud enough for those nearby to hear. "The signs never lie. Everyone knows how this ends. It's not like the crown is going to appear over some ordinary Omega." The words had stung more than she expected, even though she told herself she should be used to it by now. She had lowered her head and kept walking, refusing to let anyone see her flinch. It did not matter what he thought of her. It did not matter what anyone thought of her. She had survived worse than words. Now, standing in the cold, she watched as the pack elders began the ceremony. An old woman named Mira, the pack's historian and keeper of ancient knowledge, stepped forward with a bowl of silver liquid that shimmered strangely under the moonlight. She raised her arms toward the sky and began to chant in a language Ilara did not recognize, words that felt older than the stones beneath her feet. The crowd fell utterly silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Ilara had heard whispers about the Moonrite her entire life. It was said that once every 100 years, when the alignment of the moon was just right, the ancestral spirits of the pack would reveal the one destined to become the true Alpha, a title far above the ordinary rank of Alpha that Damien was set to inherit. The true Alpha was said to be chosen not by bloodline politics or strength in battle, but by something deeper, something the spirits alone could see. No one currently living had ever witnessed the sign appear. Most had begun to believe it was only a legend told to make young pups behave. Mira's chanting grew louder, and the silver liquid in the bowl began to glow brighter, pulsing like a heartbeat. The elders around her bowed their heads, and the crowd leaned forward, collectively holding its breath. Everyone assumed they knew what would happen next. Everyone assumed the light would rise above Damien, confirming what they had always believed to be true. Ilara felt a strange tingling sensation crawl up her spine, but she dismissed it as nerves. She glanced around, wondering if anyone else felt it, but the faces around her showed only anticipation, eyes locked on the front of the courtyard where Damien stood. Then it happened. A soft golden light lifted from the bowl, drifting upward like smoke caught in a gentle breeze. The crowd gasped as it rose higher, twisting and curling, taking shape before their eyes. Everyone expected it to settle above Damien's head, confirming his destiny as they had always known it would. Instead, the light drifted past him entirely. Gasps rippled through the courtyard as the golden glow floated over the heads of the crowd, moving steadily toward the back where the lowest-ranked members always stood. Ilara watched it come closer, her heart pounding so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. She told herself it was a mistake, that it would surely stop before reaching her, that surely the spirits had simply lost their way. But the light did not stop. It hovered directly above her head, and slowly, impossibly, it began to take shape. The glow condensed and sharpened until it formed the unmistakable outline of a crown, its edges shaped like the silhouette of a wolf with its head raised toward the moon. The crown shimmered there, suspended in the air above Ilara, radiant and undeniable. Silence fell over the courtyard like a heavy blanket. No one moved, no one breathed. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her, wide with shock and disbelief. Ilara stood frozen, staring up at the glowing crown above her, unable to comprehend what she was seeing. Surely this was a trick of the light. Surely someone would step forward and explain that this was simply part of the ceremony, that it would move on to reveal the true chosen one. But no one stepped forward. Instead, one by one, the elders began to sink to their knees. Mira was the first to kneel, her aged eyes filled with tears, as she stared at Ilara with something between awe and reverence. "The sacred wolf crown," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It has not appeared in 3 generations. It only reveals itself above the one destined to become the true Alpha, the one meant to lead not just this pack, but to unite all the packs under a single guiding light." Ilara shook her head, taking a step back. "There must be a mistake," she said quietly, though her voice cracked with uncertainty. "I'm nobody. I'm an Omega. I've been an Omega my entire life." Mira rose slowly, ignoring the ache in her old knees, and walked toward Ilara with slow, deliberate steps. The crowd parted for her, still too stunned to speak. "The crown does not make mistakes, child," she said gently. "It sees what we cannot. It sees the truth beneath the rank, beneath the title, beneath everything the world has told you about who you are." Whispers began to spread through the crowd like wildfire, voices rising in confusion and astonishment. Some pack members dropped to their knees without fully understanding why, their bodies responding to something ancient and instinctual even before their minds could process it. Others stood frozen, staring at Ilara as though seeing her for the very first time. Near the front of the courtyard, Damien's face had gone pale. His jaw was clenched so tightly that a muscle twitched beneath his skin. This was not supposed to happen. He had spent his entire life being told he would be the one, being trained and shaped for a destiny that had just been ripped away from him in front of everyone he knew. "This is absurd," he said sharply, stepping forward. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "She's an Omega. She's never trained for leadership. She's never even shown a hint of strength in battle. This has to be some kind of error." Mira turned to him, her expression calm but firm. "The crown has spoken, Damien. It does not appear based on training or battle strength. It appears based on something far deeper, something even the spirits themselves cannot fully explain to us. You may not understand it, you may not accept it, but you cannot deny what every soul in this courtyard just witnessed with their own eyes." Damien opened his mouth to argue further, but the words seemed to die in his throat as he looked around and saw the elders kneeling, saw the crowd shifting uneasily, their instincts already beginning to bend toward the girl standing at the back of the courtyard. Even his closest friends, the Betas who had laughed alongside him only moments earlier, now stared at Ilara with wide, uncertain eyes. Ilara felt the weight of every gaze pressing down on her, and for a moment, the old fear rushed back, the familiar urge to shrink away, to disappear into the crowd as she always had. But something inside her had shifted. She thought about every quiet insult she had swallowed, every time she had been dismissed without a second glance, every moment she had convinced herself that she truly was nothing more than ordinary. And yet here she stood, with a crown of light hovering above her head that no living soul had witnessed in 3 generations. She took a slow breath and lifted her chin, forcing herself to stand taller, despite the trembling in her hands. She was afraid, yes, but she refused to let that fear control her. Not tonight. Not in front of everyone who had once looked past her as though she did not exist. "I don't know why this happened to me," she said, her voice quiet but steady enough to carry across the silent courtyard. "I never asked for this. I never expected anything like this. But if the crown has chosen me, then I won't run from it. I won't pretend to be something I'm not, and I won't pretend I have all the answers either. But I will try, with everything I have, to be worthy of what it sees." A long silence followed her words, broken only by the soft crackle of the torches lining the courtyard walls. Then, slowly, more members of the pack began to kneel, their movements hesitant at first, then more certain, until nearly the entire courtyard had lowered themselves before her. It was not simply obedience born of tradition. It was something deeper, an instinct rising from somewhere ancient within them, recognizing in her a truth they could not yet fully explain. Damien remained standing amid the sea of kneeling wolves, his expression a mixture of disbelief and quiet devastation. He looked at Ilara, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in his life. The girl he had dismissed as ordinary, the girl he had mocked without a second thought, now stood beneath a light that marked her as something far greater than he had ever imagined himself to be. He did not kneel, not yet, his pride still too heavy a weight to release so quickly. But he lowered his eyes, unable to hold her gaze, and stepped back into the crowd, swallowed by the very people who had once hung on his every word. Mira reached out and gently took Alara's hand, guiding her forward to stand at the front of the courtyard, where Damien had once stood so confidently. The golden crown still glowed softly above her, casting a warm light across her face. "Tonight, everything changes," Mira announced to the pack, her voice carrying clearly through the still night air. "Tonight, we witness the truth the spirits have chosen to reveal. Ilara is not ordinary. She never was. She is the true Alpha, chosen not for the title she was born into, but for the strength of heart the crown alone can see." The pack rose together, a wave of movement rippling through the courtyard as they stood to honor her, their earlier doubts replaced with a quiet, growing respect. Ilara looked out over the crowd, over the faces that had once looked through her as though she were invisible, and felt something settle deep within her chest, something steady and calm despite the uncertainty of everything that lay ahead. She did not know exactly what it meant to be the true Alpha, or what challenges waited for her in the days to come. But standing there beneath the glow of the sacred wolf crown, surrounded by a pack finally seeing her for who she truly was, she understood one thing with absolute certainty. She was no longer ordinary, and she never would be again.